I'm bringing to the screen now Father David Todor, David Todor from the uh, Kitchener Waterloo region. His first delegation to the Kitchener Waterloo School Board went viral. He was a guest on some American major news programs, talking about his delegation, and has since made numerous delegations before the board. He's been studying the issue of books in libraries, and he's going to share his presentation with us today. Thank you very much, Melanie. I'm so glad to co-host our weekly Gender Wars report for you. With you, and for viewers, if you want to check that out, we normally put up a show once a week on Sunday afternoons on YouTube. It's the weekly Canadian Gender Wars report. Uh, Welcome, David.
Shannon, thank you so much for having me. And Melanie, thank you so much for your uh, for the information that you shared. I'm really happy. I keep up with the Gender Wars report that you two do, and honestly, I'm disturbed every time. And I can't make up my mind if these people are open-minded, so open-minded that their brains fell out, or so closed-minded that they can't accept any new information, and it's basically just pseudoscience. And I know these people expect a pat on the back for their what I believe is degenerate behavior. And it really seems, all that stuff that Melanie presented, I really do believe you have to be a modern intellectual to come up with such ideas to justify such degenerate behavior. Because to be honest, a normal person on the street, if you talk to them, I don't think they can come up with these things. But I can tell that they're getting a little desperate when they're literally begging people for allyship and for support in this. And I think the tides are turning. And right now they're so bold that they really want to make sure that people don't misunderstand them. And I'm certainly not misunderstanding them. And I think we're all kind of getting and be like, yes, thank you so much for saying the quiet part out loud. But thank you once again for putting this together.
Glad to have you, David. So you want to go ahead and share your screen, and we'll give you, what do you think, about 15, 20 minutes? Are you in that range?
Yep. So I actually don't have anything to share on the screen. I'm just gonna talk to you about what's happening, and I'm gonna just read some sections from the book. So one of the things that parents are increasingly concerned about for some time now is the books that are available in the public schools, or just in schools as well. And when you confront the schools about this, they're going to try to dismiss your concerns. They actually educate staff on how to dismiss parental concerns. And these books, they'll have you believe that these books are approved by the Ontario government or whatever province you're in, by the government. But the government, they have a list of books that are mandatory, but the schools have flexibility to add their own books as well. It's called supplementary material. So these books that are in the schools, they're not on the government approved list. I've checked that list as well. These are supplementary materials. Um, Books typically fall in one of two sections. It's either education or entertainment. And these books, I wouldn't say they're textbooks. They're not medical books. They're not therapy books. They're not self-help books. These are novels. These are stories. And I'm gonna go through a couple. I'm gonna go through three different books and just show you a range of material that is presented to the kids for various ages. Uh, these books are available physical copy in the libraries as well. There's ebooks, and then there's audio versions as well. So basically, any kid can access these books if there's an ebook or an audio copy anywhere. So 2 years ago, almost to the date, there was a teacher in Ontario named Carolyn Borjowski, and she presented at the Waterloo District School Board about age-inappropriate books. And this is how I found out about what was happening. And I had to look into it to see for myself exactly what's happening. And I was a little bit shocked. And one of the books that was brought up was called The Other Boy. And I actually just had a delegation at the Waterloo District School Board this past Monday, January 22nd. And you saw that part of that clip in the opening video. And I talked about The Other Boy as well. So this book is available in all elementary schools. So what that means is kids from kindergarten to grade six have access to this book, physical copies of this book as well. So this book basically attempts to normalize and downplay side effects of medical interventions, which can lead to lifelong psychological and physical ramifications. I'm just going to read a little bit from this book just to give you an example about what these kids are being exposed to, and you can make up your mind if you think this is appropriate for kids. So here's a quote from the book. Dr. Ann gave him a patient smile. Basically, so far, the hormone blockers have prevented Shane from going through female puberty. But once we add testosterone to the mix, he'll develop as a man. His voice will deepen, he'll get an Adam's apple, and more body and facial hair. Okay, that's that slowly. But what if he stops taking the shots? That's reversible too, right? Not entirely, Dr. Ann said. I could tell she was choosing her words carefully. Some of the changes will be permanent. Shane would have skipped female puberty, which means he most likely won't be able to have children naturally. It's cool, Shane interjected. So this is the kind of material that kids are being exposed to, and they're hoping to normalize this behavior. And I have a lot more things to say about this. I'm gonna give you a little bit of an overview about what this means after I go through the books. But like I said, these books, just for context, are available to minors age 4 and up. There's another book called "This Book Is Gay," and this was written by a transgender author, Juno Dawson. And basically, they hide adult content in children's books. And the way they get away with age appropriateness is they change the words to make them sound more childish and cute. And you're going to see over here, there's words like, instead of saying hand job, they'll say handies. Instead of saying anal sex, they're going to say blowies or bummies. And instead of saying blowjobs, they're going to say blowies. And because they're able to present what I believe is explicit sexual content and behaviors to minors, they're able to say this is age appropriate because the words sound cute. All right, so this is the book. It's called This Book is Gay. I'm just gonna read a little bit. This book basically is a manual on how you can attract minors through dating apps as well, and it identifies and defines sexual behaviors as well. So I'm just gonna quote directly from the book. If you're on Grindr under the age of 18, brackets, it happens. Be aware that swapping adult pics is actually illegal. You are distributing child pornography, even if it's of yourself. So right off the bat, this book knows that pretty much anybody under the age of 18, and I believe that all kids in the schools are minors, it's child pornography, right? But it doesn't tell you not to do it. It just it's in parentheses, it happens, like if you happen to find yourself, right? And it says, and I quote, if you're that horny that you want to do a sex meet the trick in a public place for a drink first. That way you can assess if you fancy them in the flesh. So essentially don't distribute child pornography of yourself. Just meet up with them, right? And see if you like them in the flesh. Okay. I'm going to continue with this book. Over here it says handies. Perhaps the most important skill that you will master as a gay or a bi man is the timeless classic, the hand job. Learning how to find your partner's personal style can take ages, but it could be very rewarding. Blowies. Oral sex is popping another dude's peen in your mouth or indeed popping yours in his. Lips and tongue, yes. Teeth, no. Like I said, pay attention to the language that is being used to be able to relate to kids. Bumming. It is the universal truth that many men like sticking their willies inside things. In the absence of a vagina, gay and bi men make excellent use of the back door. Gay men have slightly longer and thicker winkies. Excellent. The amygdala of gay men is more responsive to porn than those of straight men. So we have bigger dicks and we're hornier. Just saying. So this is the kind of content that school boards find appropriate for children to read. And when I read these books at the school board meeting, the reaction that I got was of disgust, but not of disgust that I'm for the books and the content, but how did I have the boldness to actually read this in a public meeting? I will be bringing harm to kids if they watch the public meeting. By their own admission, they're disgusted, but they are totally okay with minors to access this. They don't bat an eye. As a matter of fact, our school board in particular, they voted to have these books available for minors to access. They voted on this as well, and they also voted to oppose parental rights. So what's happening in the schools and the kind of books that they make available, they're doubling down on this. I'm going to read from one more book that I read at the school. And this book is available to high school kids as well. And I just want you to let me know if you find this material acceptable. Like I said, I believe that all students under the age of 18 are minors, right? Under the age of 16, they cannot consent to sexual advances or anything, regardless of perceived consent as well. It's the law. But let me read this to you and let me know what you think. Because when I read it, I had to get out and go for a walk as I was getting ready for my presentation because I was so disturbed. But this is what kids are able to read. This is a scene between a dad and a 7-year-old daughter named Kaylee. So let's have a look and see what it says. The book is called Identical, and I quote, "He lifted her gently, sat her down on the bed beside him. Then he opened the snaps on the fly of his flannel pajamas. It stood up, stiff as stalagmite. How much does Daddy love you? Show me you love me too. Touch it." He closed her hand around it. That's right, that's right. His voice rocked in rhythm with his body. I don't know what it meant, only that it made Daddy happy, and I wanted to make him happy. When Daddy finished, he brought his face to Kaylee's hair and wept. Kaylee was confused at his tears and sticky stuff icing her hands. Didn't I love you good enough, Daddy? Oh, little girl, don't you know how beautiful you are? No one is as lovely as you, not even your mother. She tried to sit up, but Daddy pushed her gently back down against the mattress. Stay like that for Daddy. I want to teach you something new. He lifted her nightgown, rolled her over her belly, coaxed her thoroughbred legs apart. She squirmed a poultry. Don't move. This won't hurt. You'll like it, I promise. He kissed the length of her torso down to her small naked V. Daddy taught her something new, something worse, something awful, something worse, something wonderful, something every little girl should know the joy of, though she shouldn't learn it from her daddy. I mean, to be honest, I feel sick just reading that stuff, and I don't know how this makes you feel, but this is the kind of content that school boards find it appropriate. Uh, and I get all kinds of justifications from these people about these books, right? So I'm just going to read you some of the things. Some of the school boards, they say these books, parents hear about it because of the US news. And to that I say, great. If any country is exposing these books, it is the parent's duty to go to the library and ask if the books are available to kids. If they're not available, great. If they are available, why are these books inside the schools? So, don't worry about it. It's your duty to protect your kids. Other comments I see is parents didn't read the entire book. And to that I say, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. You don't have to watch an entire movie with a sex scene in it just to say to your kid it's not appropriate. It doesn't matter if it's a 10-second sex scene in a kid-friendly movie. That movie is no longer appropriate because the sex scene undermined that movie. And it's the same thing with the books. If the books are inappropriate and they have inappropriate content, it's simply not appropriate for kids, and that is okay. The other things that they say is, these books, they teach kids about sex, and parents don't really want their kids to learn about sex. And to that I say is the school board is trying to play the parental figure here and trying to remove parents from their parental duty. And they're saying, oh, parents are so uncomfortable with this. We'll talk, and they're foaming at the mouth at the opportunity to talk to minors about their sexual preferences. Okay. This is not the job of the school board. They need to be focusing on academics. The other things that they say is parents want to ban books. And to that I say they're a bunch of hypocrites because they're banning children classic books. But there's nothing wrong with saying, I don't think these books should be available in the school. They need to be removed from the school shelves. So don't feel bad. Don't feel guilty if they try to convince you that you're trying to ban books. Take these books out of the school. These books are not age appropriate. The other things that they say is kids want to see themselves in these lived experience. And to that I say they're a bunch of degenerates because any kid that is seeing themselves in an abused experience and they're reliving their experience, that's that's abuse and that's trauma. And you're basically reliving trauma, right? And they also say that these books raise awareness about abuse. And I actually agree with this because I am aware now, and you are aware now that the school boards are facilitating and what I believe is child abuse. And awareness is raised to me that about this abuse. And they constantly want to educate parents, and they're saying, staff, you need to talk to parents on how to dismiss parental concerns and how to say, like, what you're saying, it's not really happening. These books are not available in school. We want kids to have access to different to everything, to knowledge, and we're not banning books, etc. You're a book banner. Doesn't matter. At the end of the day, these books are completely inappropriate, and these books are available inside the schools. And I just wanted to tie this together and teach you what it means to groom children, because at the end of the day, I want to tell you how these books are being used to normalize this behavior. Okay, so grooming, just gonna go through this really quick, has 7 steps, and I'm gonna tie this all in with the books. The first step is targeting. So the perpetrator identifies a potential victim. They may choose children who are vulnerable, isolated, or seeking attention and validation. So the school boards are targeting children. The groomer initiates a contact with the child, often pretending to be friendly and caring. They may use online platforms, social media, in-person interactions to establish rapport and gain the child's trust. And this is exactly what they're doing. We're empowering the kids, trust us. We have your the best in mind for you. It's your right as a kid, right? Then they establish a connection. The groomer creates to work a close emotional bond with the child. They may provide attention, compliments, and gifts to make the child feel special and valued. And we see this happening in the schools. They have shrines in the library, making the children feel special. Come over here, let's read these books. We got these great books. You can be an ally, right? They isolate the child. So the groomer may attempt to create distance between the child, their friends, family, and other protective figures. This isolation makes the child more dependent on the groomer and less likely to disclose abuse. This is exactly what we're seeing. We saw in Melanie's presentation. There are procedures and policies in the schools that say don't tell the parent if the kid chooses to transition at school. They isolate kids from their parents. The other thing that these books are doing is desensitizing, which is the next step. So the groomer gradually introduces sexual content into their interactions with the child. This can be done through decisions, explicit content, or sharing inappropriate material. The aim is to normalize sexual topics and behavior. And this is exactly what we're seeing right now in the schools. And when kids go to school, if a child brings up something sexual and they talk about hand jobs and anal sex and all that stuff, that's a red flag that this child is probably being abused. But because they're normalizing all this behavior and all this talk through days of sexual celebration, and they bring in organizations and they have material and stuff, and they're constantly talking to kids about their preferred sexual behaviors. Now, you can't tell the difference between actual vulnerable children who are being abused or if they're just talking because it's the latest trend to talk about in school. Okay. So they're normalizing this behavior. They're basically desensitizing kids. The next is the groomer starts testing boundaries. Uh, to see the child's reactions to sexual advances. And they may gauge how far they can push the child without encountering resistance or disclosure. And finally, it's exploitation. Once the groomer believes the child is emotionally and psychologically conditioned, they may escalate the abuse to involve sexual conduct or exploitation. And this is actually what I'm going to go through next as well. And I believe these books are doing just that in schools. And the teachers in Ontario, they graduate from the Ontario College of Teachers. And I've asked for the document to identify and defy child abuse because I believe that's what these books are doing. So they sent me a document called Child Sexual Abuse. It is your business. And yes, it is my business. It is your business as a parent to know exactly what's happening. So according to the Canadian Centre for Child Protection, which this is the organization that Ontario College of Teachers uses, they say non-contact sexual abuse includes exposing a child to sexually explicit material and asking sexually intrusive questions or making sexually explicit comments to a child. Signs of sexually abused children include advanced sexual knowledge beyond their level of development, sexualized behavior inconsistent with behavior of children of the same age, withdrawn, depressed, decline in school performance, aggressive, self-destructive, and many more. Concerning adult behavior is using children to meet their emotional needs, aka affirmation. And we have really woke teachers in the school who have the flags out there who are looking to get affirmation from the kids, respect my pronouns. They're looking to give out affirmation to their kids as well. That's what it looks like, right? Normalizing or minimizing inappropriate interactions with children, making sexual references, encouraging children to behave sexually towards each other, making sexual references in the presence of children. And I believe if a child is led to be convinced that medical and genital alteration is required to achieve an identity, I believe this is child abuse as well. So I'm trying to tie this all together. And as you can see, the books that are presented to minors in school, I believe this is together with isolating and opposing parental rights, as you've heard from Melanie's presentation, this is something that's happening in the schools, which is isolating child from protective figures. They're hiding this stuff. Schools are putting shrines up in the library. They got the flags up. They got their a book section dedicated to sexual behaviors and preferences with minors. If this doesn't light a fire under your ass to do something, I really don't know what will. And the education system, they want a pat on the back for this. They want you to be tolerant. They want you to accept what they're doing right now. And I really don't believe that this is appropriate behavior. I don't think you should be tolerant to this. And they say parents are hateful, parents are bigots, and all of this. And to that, I say, what do you expect? Do you expect a pat on the back? I hate this kind of behavior. I hate when children are put in a position to what I consider as abuse. This behavior should not be loved. Parents have the right to abuse this behavior, and parents need to participate in their own rescue. And of course, this is what this summit is all about that Shannon put together, to inform parents about their rights. And my presentation is almost over, and I just wanted to say one more thing. If any staff encourages or exploits children through sexual conversation, grooms them, has relationships with them, urges them on a path of medical identity, sterilizes them from an early age, or celebrates their preferred sexual identity, they need to be removed immediately, and in my opinion, jailed. Because we grew up in a time, and I remember a time when having sexual discussions with children was completely inappropriate. You can't have sexual discussions at work. That's called workplace sexual harassment, right? But now it's called sexual empowerment. The language is flipped. You're the bad guy now as a parent because you're concerned. Don't be fooled by this. You are the authority. You need to go there and you need to take action and you need to say, these are my kids. You have no business pushing sexuality on my kid. You have no business presenting them and making these books available. There's absolutely nothing wrong with you as a parent sticking up and saying this is completely inappropriate. I will not tolerate this behavior. At the end of the day, with this DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, what kind of things are we really including in this? We're including books with explicit sexual content, rape, pedophilia, incest, child abuse, medical transition. This is inclusive. Is this inclusive? Is this diverse? We're finally diversifying what kids can learn to include topics of normalizing sexual abuse and normalizing teachers to present this stuff to teachers. They'll bring in the drag queens to talk about, to read them these kind of books. Is this the diversity we're talking about? Are we making things more equitable because suddenly, kids are being put on the same level as people who want to exploit them, and now we're all equitable and we all have the same rights, and parents don't have any more rights? Is this the kind of equity that we're talking about? I really do believe the school is completely out of line on this. And I do believe the books that are in the school, it's telling of their behavior and it's telling of the kind of values that they promote and the kind of behavior that they find acceptable. Not only that, but they will double down on this behavior. And as you saw in Melanie's presentation before, they are so bold, they will take action against parents and they will try to educate and dismiss your concerns. Participate in your own rescue. And I do believe that they're getting desperate because parents are absolutely plowing through this and we can't stop winning. And I'm really encouraged by that. And I just want to thank you to Shannon and everybody who put together this summit meeting for parental rights. It's very encouraging. Thank you.
Thank you, David. And you know, there are a lot of people behind the scenes who have helped make this day come into existence. All kinds of support, tremendous talent, and leadership. And I'm going to talk more about the Parents' Rights Coalition of Canada in about an hour or so. David, thank you very, very much for your presentation.